This is section 1.4 in your book, and we're talking about comparing and ordering integers. And here's an example. Use a number line to order these integers from least to greatest. Here's a number line, and they've given you some numbers here, negative, positives, and 0, for you to plot on the number line. So this is what you would do. -8, you would draw a dot on -8 like that. Then on 5, right here, -4, 2, 0, and 6. The next step is order these integers from least to greatest. Least to greatest means that you order them from the smallest number all the way to the biggest number. Now be careful here. Doing the first step is very important because once you have these numbers plotted on the number line, it's very easy to see which number is the smallest in value. And how do we determine that? Well, the farther to the left a number is, the smaller it is. And here's why. Notice if I go from 9 to 8 and I move to the left, the number to the left is smaller than the number to the right. If I go ahead and move again to the left, this number is smaller than 8. If I keep moving to the left like this, notice how the numbers keep decreasing all the way to 0. And the same thing will follow as I keep moving to the left. The numbers will decrease forever and ever. That means that the more to the left I move, the smaller the number or the value of that number is. Therefore, if I look at this number line, the farthest number to the left is -8. That means that that's my smallest number. The next number would be -4 because now I'm moving from the least to the greatest number. If we move to the right, they become bigger. Okay? So that's what I want, from least to greatest. So the next number would be 0, and then 2, 5, and 6. And there you have it. When they ask you to use a number line to order the integers from least to greatest, the number line helps you arrange them in the correct order. As you practice, you won't have to do this. Okay, another thing we talked about is the absolute value. The absolute value is the distance that a number is from 0. Okay, on the number line, absolute value is distance. And one important thing about distance is that distance is never, ever, ever negative. Okay, distance is always positive. So keep that in mind. And this is the symbol we use to denote absolute value. So the absolute value of 5 is written with these little symbols and the number inside the symbols. This would be read as the absolute value of 5. Here I have an example. It says, use a number line to find the absolute value of the number. So here they're asking, what is the absolute value of 5? Notice, remember that absolute value refers to distance. How far is 5 away from 0 on the number line? So here's 5 right here. And now I'm going to count how far 5 is from 0. So I start at 5. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is 5 units away from 0. So that means that the absolute value for 5 is equal to 5. There it is. Let's do the second example, the absolute value of -7. This is asking, how far is -7 from 0? So here's -7, and we count how many units is -7 away from 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Negative 7 is 7 units away from 0, so that means that the absolute value of negative 7 is equal to 7. Remember, I said absolute value is never negative because the distances are never negative, okay? Opposites. Two numbers are opposites if they have the same absolute value but different signs. For example, 10 and negative 10 are opposites. Why are they opposites? Because if I take the absolute value for 10 and I take the absolute value for negative 10, they're both equal to 10. So when this happens, that means that 10 and negative 10 are opposites. And another thing I want to mention is that whenever you see a negative sign in front of a variable, like negative a and negative x, for example, we will read this as the opposite of a, and we will read this as the opposite of x. Keep that in mind, okay? In this next exercise, it says to give the absolute value of the number and also the opposite of the number. So for number 2, this is what I'm going to do. The absolute value for 3 is 3. The opposite of 3 will equal negative 3. This one here, negative 1, let's do absolute value. The absolute value for negative 1 is equal to 1. And the opposite of negative 1 will be 1. For this one, the absolute value for 10 is equal to 10, and the opposite of 10 is equal to negative 10. Okay? And for this one, we have the absolute value of negative 11 is equal to 11, and the opposite of negative 11 is equal to 11. Okay? So the opposite of a negative number is the positive number. The opposite of a positive number is its negative. Same thing here, I have a negative number, its opposite is positive. Okay, but this would be the correct notation. It would be the opposite of the negative number, which is 11. Okay, let's go to our next slide. In this example, evaluating variable expressions, they give you these two expressions and they want you to evaluate them when y is equal to negative 5. So for letter A, I have this expression. And remember I said we're going to read this as the opposite of y. So remember when we evaluate, the first thing we do is we substitute. So I keep my negative sign right there, I bring it down, and then this y I'm going to substitute for negative 5. So I'm going to write a parentheses and write negative 5. And notice that this expression is saying the opposite of negative 5. And how much is that? Well, the opposite of negative 5 is 5. So the answer to letter A would be 5. For letter B, 17 minus the absolute value for y, first thing we do is we substitute. So bring everything down, and wherever there's a y, we're going to plug in a negative 5. Negative 5. So I end up with 17 minus the absolute value for negative 5. We're going to treat absolute value as a grouping symbol or a parentheses. So we know with the order of operations that we should solve the absolute value first. So 17 minus the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. And now we can subtract 17 minus 5, which is 12. And that's your final answer for letter B. In this checkpoint, we have 4 exercises where we're going to substitute x equal to negative 4. Try these on your own in your notebook. Hit pause, and then come back and see if you got the same answer. For number 6, we have the opposite of x. So we substitute, we bring down that negative opposite, and we write wherever there's an x, we plug in -4. And the opposite of -4 is equal to 4. For number 7, 12 minus the absolute value of x. 12, we substitute absolute value of x, which is -4. We solve the absolute value for -4, which is 4, and 12 minus 4 is 8. For number 8, the absolute value of x plus 9. Substitute absolute value of x for the absolute value of -4 plus 9. And the absolute value of -4 is 4 plus 9, which is 13. For number 9, we did absolute value minus 1. Substitute x for -4 minus 1, and the absolute value of -4 is 4 minus 1, which is 3. And this is how you would substitute values into your absolute value. I hope this video helps. We have practice. I want you to practice page 24, 1 through 17 all. This is to be done in your class notebook, okay? And the homework for this section will be due on Monday. I'll see you in class.